Hello and welcome to May the Review Be With You with Nick and Joe. I'm Joe.
I'm Nick.
And today we're back. We've been gone for a little bit. We haven't been reviewing. We've had a lot going on. But we're taking it back and we're re-engaging in our time travel draft. And today is Nick's pick on the time travel draft board. Our time travel draft category, man, if I could go back in time, is superhero time travel movie. Nick, what'd you pick?
X-Men Days of Future Past. One of my favorite X-Men films, and subsequently, time travel films, is my pick for superhero time travel. And I already know that I crushed this category pick.
Yeah, no, this is definitely a good one. For a recap, on our last time travel draft episode, which if you haven't watched that, or if you're not familiar, go back into our time travel draft watch list, our playlist, to get caught up on what we've been drafting and what movies that you need to get caught up on. Our last episode for superhero time travel draft, we were talking about my pick, which was Donnie Darko, which we had a lot of debate on that. I very much recommend taking a listen to that and seeing who it is that you agree with here. We were very, very divisive on this, especially Nick had some outrageous opinions on this movie. Take a look at that. As far as what the heck we're even talking about, the time travel draft movie list, Nick and I went through a bunch of different time travel movies and we fit them into our categories to make what we thought was each individually the best time travel movie watch list. Today, as I said, category superhero time travel movie. Nick, as you said, X-Men Days of Future Past, one of your favorites. Can you tell us a little bit more about why you picked it in this particular category?
Yeah, so of course, superheroes. X-Men are superheroes, everybody knows that. So kind of fits in the category there. And, there is also time travel in the movie. So that's pretty simply why I picked this in the category, Joe. But for those who don't know, or who do know but want a refresher, essentially the cool part about this film is it brings us the old X-Men and the new X-Men, if you will. And what that really means is just the, we've got our older versions of like Dr. X and Mystique and
I like Dr. X. I mean, he does have a doctorate, but I'm pretty sure that's not what he goes by.
That's true. Professor X. But
he should represent, he should use that title. He is a doctor.
Professor X and Magneto, and we get Storm, of course, but then we also get the McAvoy professor. We get the Michael Fassbender Magneto. Of course, we have Logan, Hugh Jackman. And so it's really cool how they did this film and brought like all of the X-Men actors and actresses like together in one film. Of course, the only way to do that really is like via time travel. And so I think the time travel mechanism is really cool in this film. It's my favorite kind of time travel, and we've had a couple other films that use some sort of like consciousness time travel. This is that like completely, and so really freaking cool. It's definitely one of my favorite like concepts for time travel that we've talked about.
I think that's true for me too. I very much love the idea of sending like your consciousness through time, right? I very much will refer to this mechanism as the Desmond Hume form of time travel.
Fucking Lost.
Never misses Lost a beat. Fans out there. There's always a way to relate it to Lost. There's always is. But yeah, this movie felt very much like it was born out of the necessity to compete with Marvel and the success of the Avengers after like they had just proven like what a success an ensemble movie can be, which is funny given the fact that like every X-Men movie is technically an ensemble movie, but like I don't know. I feel like before this movie, truthfully like only huge, this might be a controversial opinion, the only really great success that the X-Men had as a franchise in cinema, I think, across the board, is X2 before this movie. And I'm talking about like critics liked it, fans liked it, comic book lovers liked it. Like X2 was like pretty universally loved. Like X1 commercially successful. Obviously, that had to be the case. That's why there's an X2. But there were some things about X1 that like people weren't necessarily about, right? And especially like with these ensemble movies for X-Men, they tend to like there's so many people that they wash up or they end up like washing out a bunch of characters, right?
Yeah.
People don't get time in the spotlight.
Right.
Avengers kind of proved, hey, you can do one of these and everyone can have time in the spotlight, and it's hugely successful when you get all these superstars from different movies together.
Mm-hmm.
And X-Men had that, and they took advantage of it, right? And they made it work. They made it work in this really great way with, of course, Hugh Jackman being our bridge in between the two generations. And it's pretty cool. I think it's my turn.
Oh, I forgot.
I could tell. I was like, he's weirdly not pushing this right now.
Oh my, I totally forgot that you have to do a 15-second summary.
Please explain.
Oh, I'm so excited. So anytime we review a film, we each take turns giving a 15-second summary of that film. And then the other person rates the summary giver. Well, Joe has the great honor of giving us a 15-second summary today, and I'm very, very happy about it because I had totally forgotten. So if it would have been me, I would have been pissed. All right. Anyway, Joe, you're stalling. Ready. You're stalling, Joe.
I brought it up. I'm stalling. Get out of here.
15-second summary of X-Men Days of Future Past. 3, 2, 1, go.
The future of the X-Men is in jeopardy by giant robots, and it can only be saved if Wolverine goes to the past, talks to the past X-Men, convinces Professor X and humanity to give them a chance. Done.
What? 15 seconds. That was as good as we've ever had, I think, maybe.
That was my best one. That was my best one ever.
You finished in 12 seconds? That's a record.
I've never done that.
We might need to do.
Not to like that point. I was like, I have nothing else to say. Nothing else to say. It's actually a really straightforward movie.
It is actually pretty straightforward. Yeah. A+. That was really good. I hate that was really good.
I had to get you back after you got me back on what was it, Donnie Darko? You were talking smack about Donnie Darko, and then you had this great. It was like your best summary of all time.
We're getting too good at this. We might need to lower it to 10 seconds.
Jesus. Talking about this movie, when it was first announced, I think that there was a ton of excitement for what you were saying, Nick. You know, we were getting the old era of X-Men, which at the time, it might feel a little weird now because like of all the multiverse shenanigans that are happening in superhero films. But at the time, it kind of felt like we had moved on from the Stewart era of X-Men.
Right.
Right? We were embracing like this new, younger era. So to know that we weren't leaving them, we weren't casting them aside, that these actors would still be reprising these roles in some capacity, like that was awesome. That was so exciting.
Yeah, I mean, it was awesome for sure. Anytime that you can just bring like characters you love together, even from different eras, right? It's just fun. And so that was, I think it got most of us like really immediately just excited for what this movie could be. And the cool part is like it exceeded my expectations when it first came out, and it's still one of my favorite superhero movies to rewatch. Like it holds up still. I don't rewatch most of these X-Men films. I rewatch this one like every year or every other year. I love it that much. So it's really cool that we get to talk about it.
I think that this is probably the best opening scene of at least at that time before Logan came out, the best opening scene of like the X-Men franchise. I think it immediately demonstrates the threat that the Sentinels impose, right? And it was just kind of like wild watching everybody die, right? Because it's not inherently like obvious that this is going to be erased, very, very soon, right? And even though it's erased, I think the threat still lingers because at this point, like all they're doing is running away, right?
It's still high stakes.
Right, still high stakes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like the Sentinels immediately feel like this like horrible threat, right? And I think the movie does a great job in demonstrating that. It is the best use of an opening scene, I think, up to this point in like the X-Men timeline.
We can kind of get into time travel if you want here, but Professor X has this crazy idea of sending himself back all the way to 1973 before the Sentinel program was launched to stop them from being created so that all of this gets undone. Shadowcat Kitty says, she's like, we can only send you back a few minutes because your mind, like even Professor X's mind, with how powerful it is, like will be ripped to shreds if we send him back too far. And so like right away we're already getting like explanation for like this consciousness time travel, right? And like how far back can it work without being like completely ripped apart. And then of course the only person in the room capable of putting himself back together as fast as he is ripped apart is Logan. And the cool part is it also works for his mind, right? It's not just his body that we're finding out can also be like healed immediately. It's like his brain, his mind, his consciousness is like all encompassing in this like quick healing. We're sending Logan, we're sending future Logan's mind back to 1973 into his 1973 form, which is so cool.
I do like why we're using Hugh Jackman's Wolverine for this. I think it makes, I think from the movie's standpoint, from its perspective, it makes perfect sense, right? It was neat that we got Bishop in the beginning going time traveling because like typically like he is our X-Men time traveler.
Right.
And I thought they came up with like a really good reason as to why it's not going to be Bishop, right? So yeah, no, I really enjoyed that. Getting into the 70s, it's a pleasure. I honestly like I love Stewart as Professor X, but like I don't know, there's something about James McAvoy that I really appreciate. That's a lot more fun as X. So like it's great seeing him. Magneto, always a showstopper.
Yeah, we get Peter Dinklage too, is playing the main.
All right, so this is actually one of my problems with the movie.
Oh no!
All right, so I love Peter Dinklage, right? I really do. I don't think he was cast well for this movie.
Really?
Yeah, I think it's a bad cast. And it's not that like I think that he's necessarily doing a bad job. It just doesn't feel like he's putting forth a lot of effort into the character, and I don't necessarily think that that's his fault. I think Bryan Singer was just like, you're a scientist, so you have to be cold about everything. So be cold about everything. And it's like, dude, let him act. He's a really good actor. Like everybody else gets to have like these big performances where like they're really like selling it. And like, if you're a muted character, like you can still have a big impact on an audience. But like honestly, like I don't think he does. Like you could switch out Peter Dinklage honestly for any other actor, and I think it'd be like the same performance. And this is why I think it's that director. I'm not gonna say his name. That director's fault. I refuse.
Joe doesn't like the director of this film. We're not gonna say his name. Anyway,
for the record, I'm not alone in this, but yeah, he's a source of a lot of emotions. Anyway, yeah, so I don't think Peter Dinklage was a good cast for this. I think the only reason why he is Peter Dinklage was like super hot in entertainment at the time. And for the record, he should still be. Peter Dinklage rules.
Yes.
We love Peter Dinklage.
Yes.
He deserves everything. But yeah, I think that's the only thing it was. He was just another name to add to the bill to get butts in seats. So just talking about things that we love in the movie, I mean, we have to talk about how this was the movie that started the epic slow motion speedster scenes that would send 1,000 other slow motion speedster scenes into cinema. This was the one. This was the greatest like speedster scene in all movies ever.
Yeah, this is as good as it gets. We've got Peter Maximoff. We get Peter Maximoff. We get the awesome breaking Magneto out of
Pietro.
the
Sorry, I was like, why does that sound wrong?
Yeah,
Pietro Maximoff.
Pietro Maximoff scene where he helps break Magneto out, and we also get the question mark of, is Magneto his father, which is weird, but anyway.
Yeah, I love that they like hint at that.
They like dangle that.
Don't worry about it.
dangle it and then like throw it away. It's like, all right, that's
Yeah.
a weird thing to even like mess with. But
He's also holding like his baby sister Wanda, which like for some reason they're not twins. He's just baby sister Wanda's there. Like, all right.
But we get the Maximoffs and we get this awesome breaking Magneto out of the Pentagon scene, which is still one of the coolest fucking scenes in all of Marvel. And then of course the slow motion stopping bullets.
The time in the bottle. Time in the bottle scene.
Yeah. Incredible. One of the top scenes. I mean, if we did a top 15 scenes in all of like Marvel, including the Sony stuff, like this would have to be it, like in the top 15, right?
Oh yeah, this is like without a doubt, like I think this is the funnest scene in all of X-Men, like the entire franchise.
Yeah, that's a good point. It probably is. Yeah, it's really cool. And
this
is one of the reasons why like this movie is so rewatchable, because it has some really fun scenes and really cool scenes that you want to just like watch again. So that's one of them.
I have one last thing I need to bring up.
Okay.
It's very important.
It probably isn't.
I mean, you're right. But like also like this movie just decided, oh yeah, Magneto killed JFK.
Oh, no.
Which is wild. Or no, sorry. Yeah, he actually didn't. He tried to save him, right? But at first, that's how we're introduced to it. And like, I totally forgot about that aspect of the movie. And I went nuts when that got brought up. I was like, oh my God, I forgot that's where we were going with this.
Dude, that's one of the funniest scenes when they're in the elevator after Pietro gets him out. And then Pietro's just like, what'd you do, man? What'd you do? And he goes, and Magneto's like, I killed JFK. And Pietro just like turns around into the corner with the security guard taped up to the elevator. And he's just like, yikes.
It's like, damn, that's metal as hell. No pun intended.
Such a funny scene. What else?
Time travel.
Thank you.
Time travel. Either none of it makes sense or all of it does.
I think all of it does in this case.
I think 99% of it does.
I think all of it does.
Yeah, 99%. I think. Okay, so as you said, our method of time travel is we're sending a consciousness back through time. We have the perfect conduit, Hugh Jackman, a body and mind that heals and stays pretty static throughout the decades, right? So that's great. That's perfect. I think, at least for like the kind of time travel that they're like talking about here, I don't know what else to call it except like remove a domino time travel, right? Like you remove the domino or a Jenga. Let's call it a Jenga block. You remove a Jenga block, it changes everything, right?
Yeah.
And while that feels very Back to the Future-y, I think for the sake of this movie, I think it works, right? They kept it very simple. It's like change one thing in the past, it's going to change the future, right? And like they were very clear about that. Cool, love that. I think that totally works for this movie.
Yep.
I have one very nitpicky thing about this movie, and it's time travel. That it bothered me when I saw it for the first time. It bothers me now. When did Kitty get this power? Like this comes out of nowhere. And like the movie's like, don't worry about it. It's a time travel movie, nerds. Okay, just get on board or get out. Like,
I didn't even consider that. That's never even crossed my mind. And you know what? I don't care. I do not care.
How does it not cross your mind? This is the girl who phases through walls, and like out of nowhere, she's like, I can send consciousness back through time. It's like, can we take a step back? When? Why? How? Like, just give me something. Like, I can, phasing through space isn't so dissimilar from phasing through time. Like, just a quick sentence like that. Just something.
I have nothing to say to you. I don't know. I have no idea.
It's a decent point.
Honestly, it's a great point. I don't know. I didn't really know Kitty's character too well anyway, so I had no clue what her powers really were. Like, I knew the phasing through walls thing, but like, I don't know. She's not one of those X-Men that like I know much about. So I just like, when she had that power, I was like, okay, cool. She has that power too. Like, I have no idea. Like
from what you're saying, this is crazy what you're saying. Like, not what you're saying specifically, but like the movie's logic here. Because you're hitting on something. So like the three original X-Men movies, like was saying before, there's so many characters that you don't have a lot of time to spend with them,
Right.
right? And like usually that's not a good thing, right? People get washed out, right? But it actually sounds like they took advantage of the fact
Yeah.
that they did not establish those rules for Kitty,
Right.
and they were like, yeah, she sends people back in time, and like people who weren't familiar with the character and only really knew her through the movies, they're like, yes.
Exactly. That's exactly what happened.
It doesn't change this movie at all. Like it
Right.
totally works for the movie.
Right.
I'm not taking any points off. It's just like something that I'm like, what? Like, where does this come from?
Yeah. It worked. I mean, yeah. I mean, that's a great point, but it's kind of just like, okay, that's what we're doing now because they just established it right at the beginning and there's no question marks about it. So
Right.
um,
I will say,
yeah.
I think the reason why they did it is, if I remember correctly, I think it's Kitty who, in the original like Days of Future Past storyline, it's Kitty who goes back in time. I'm like 99% sure about that. I forget how exactly that happens. It's not because of her power. I can tell you that much. But it's Kitty. So like this is like a cool way of like keeping Kitty like involved in the Days of Future Past storyline.
Got it.
With Hugh Jackman still being the guy to go back, which like honestly for like this franchise makes total sense that it's Hugh Jackman.
Yeah, for sure. And that was really awesome, right? Like having Logan go back in time and then having to meet younger Charles and Magneto. Like, what a cool, just really awesome storyline. Really, I mean, just really cool.
It also gives us like, given the fact that it's like a neurological like form of time travel, it gives a great excuse as to why the only two generation of like X people to like meet each other are the two Xaviers, which like that's such a great scene. When old Xavier is like encouraging young Xavier.
Yeah, that's sick. It's another one of those moments in the movie where like this is really cool, you know, like so cool. And yeah, so like from a time travel perspective, like time travel consciousness, we've got rules that they obey, right? Like has to, you know, Logan has to essentially like stay calm basically is the rule for him while he's sitting there, which there is a moment where he sees Stryker and like gets all out of whack and is like phasing in and out of the times, which is
was cool.
That's a really cool moment too, right? Like everything's going well, like, and then of course he sees this guy who's going to bring him a lot of hurt one day, and his mind goes into like a bender. So that was nice. That was a cool scene. But we get a couple other explanations of like time travel, right? And like I guess the only real rule is like don't die before the mission's over, right? Because like they have to outlive the Sentinels from killing them in the future, or else that's it. And then of course like Logan, I mean he can't die, but like he has to get far enough in convincing Charles and Magneto in the past to complete the mission, so that if anything happens to him in the past, it still happens in the future, which like that is the case, right? Like towards the end of the film, Magneto like puts him all these like crowbars through him and then throws him into the lake and he just sinks to the bottom. But like at that time, like the mission isn't complete yet. But like Logan had done enough for Charles to like figure out how to make Mystique make the right choice.
I think its time travel really sticks the landing, and it is so great to see like that happy ending of like them in the X Mansion, and like, you know, it's become a refuge of like happiness and education and self-betterment and acceptance, right? Like that's so great. And that scene, I mean, there's so many wonderful character scenes in this movie. And I think one of the best, and I know this is one of your favorites, is Hugh Jackman. I don't know why I keep saying that. Logan coming into the mansion and learning about all the differences that have happened, and then telling Professor Xavier like, I'm gonna need some catching up on history, and Professor X actually understanding this is the Logan that I talked to in 1973.
Right. He's just like, welcome back. You know,
Yeah.
like it's just like Patrick Stewart's such a good actor. You know, like he's like, well, you know, or Logan's just like, well, Professor, history's a little bit fuzzy. You know, I just got back from 1973 or whatever he says, and uh, the look on Patrick Stewart's face in that moment is just like so awesome. He's just like, "Welcome back." You know, like anytime I see that, I'm like, okay, well, I want to watch the whole movie again because like getting to that moment of realization that like Logan succeeded is like so cool. But it brings up a lot of questions. So my biggest question is like, what's the X-Men timeline? Because Logan gets thrown into the lake and Stryker is the guy who fishes him out. And then this is
Right.
essentially how Logan gets to Stryker's lab and gets the adamantium put inside of him and all this stuff, right? But that's not always what the case was, right? This is how this movie explains how Logan still gets this part of him done, right? But prior to this film, it was a different way that Logan had been captured, essentially, and given this adamantium. So then my other question is, does this film negate any other X-Men films? Like, did I forget if Dark Phoenix came out before or after this film?
So
And
yeah, Dark Phoenix comes out after this film. So I think you can, I guess, yeah, you can say X3 never happened because
right,
Jean's alive and so is Scott. So I guess X2 didn't happen either.
right, which is weird.
Right. It is. It's weird.
So it brings up a lot of questions, but mainly the Stryker thing with how Logan is like captured is like a big question for me, I guess, like the whole timeline of it. But they made it make sense ish. So yeah,
I mean, all right. So like, here's the thing. Like, these movies are not that Jesus. They don't care about consistency.
right, right,
I will actually applaud them for giving a reason for future movies with Wolverine for him to continue having adamantium in his skeleton. Like this
right.
movie actually took that into consideration and was like, hey, we're still going to want to sell toys of this man with metal claws. So
Yeah.
like that still needs to happen. We need to establish that it happened.
So
like you know, of all the inconsistencies, at least they thought that one through.
Yeah, they still figured out how to get Stryker and him in the same.
Yeah, because like Stryker really doesn't serve like a huge purpose in the movie until
Right.
like that moment, and
Right.
like I assume that's why they had him around, right? They were just
Yeah.
like, well, we're gonna make sure like, well, I guess I shouldn't say that. You brought up a great point about like the mental anguish that Logan experiences when he sees Stryker, and
Right.
that is kind of an important character moment.
Yeah, he played a role for sure, and then of course like
Yeah.
keeping the canonness of like Logan having to go through all this like these trials of like getting the adamantium put in him. So like it's cool that they took the time to like establish that, knowing that changing the whole future, you know. But that's what's also cool is that the Sentinel thing, like that's the track that the X-Men were on the whole time until this movie, basically, right? Like,
Yeah.
so if they never did this movie, eventually we would have gotten to the Sentinel future in the X-Men storyline, right? Is essentially what the movie's establishing. Anyway.
Okay, so first off, kicking off our scores, we're gonna talk about how well this movie functioned just as a movie.
Honestly, I love this film. This is a 4.8 for me. Like, sorry, you said, yeah, out of 5. 4.8 out of 5. So, this is like probably my favorite X-Men film, maybe besides Logan. But like, if we're talking about like Logan's really more of a, it's almost like a standalone. It's really just about Logan, like as a X-Men film with multiple characters. Like, goes like this is my favorite one, and I love the time travel of it. I've watched this movie so many times that it's probably a high score for a lot of other people, but for me, it's like right on par. Like this is a 4.8. I'm not giving it a 5 just because it feels weird to give movies like a perfect score. Like, and there's obviously a couple things that like don't make a ton of sense, but 4.8.
I'm not far behind you. I'm a 4.5. I think this is one of the stronger X-Men entries in the entire franchise. There's very little I have to complain about this, sans like Peter Dinklage and like maybe just like a few like things here and there, like we were talking about like the Mystique thing. But yeah, overall, yeah, this movie's super fun. It's probably the funnest, I think, X-Men movie that's out there.
Yeah.
Especially like if you were a fan of the original trilogy.
Yeah.
No, this movie's super fun.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, 4.5. Okay. Time travel.
This fits fantastically in like the time travel is really awesome. I love this kind of time travel, the consciousness time travel. I was saying it earlier, like that form of time travel is like my favorite. This is also, I'm giving this a 4.8 as well.
Nice.
I have like no issues at all with the time travel here. Like I think it's damn near perfect the way that it's explained, and also like done. I think it's great.
I think for the logic of the movie, I think it follows all of its own logic. I think the mechanism is super simple, and very easy to follow, even for like a casual like science fiction fan, right? The I wouldn't even call this a gripe. The only thing that like it's not even like necessarily illogical. It's like the kind of thing if like if you think too much about it, it doesn't really make sense. It's just the conflict of like the past, like we're watching that play out at the same time of the conflict of the future, and like you would think like just by like necessity of like sending like someone to the past, like the domino would fall pretty fast.
Right.
Right. It's like we did the action and like we would feel the effects like pretty quickly. But like we see like both conflicts playing out at like the same time. I'm just gonna put that up to like that's movie logic, right? It's just
Right.
for the sake of like a good story,
Yeah.
right? It's fun. It's more fun that way.
For sure.
So I'm only gonna take a little bit off. 4.9. I think
Nice.
like honestly, like
Yeah.
the time travel in this movie is great.
Yeah.
It's fantastic, and that leaves us to and I'm really oh god this hurts. That leaves us to our category, superhero time travel movie. It's a 5 for me. It's a 5. Like it fits the category perfect.
Yep. 5 for me as well.
Yeah.
This is like, yeah, I mean, this was a great pick on my part for the time traveler draft. This might be the closest perfect score of all the movies we've done so far with how high our ratings are for all of them.
Yeah. Like honestly, yeah,
Like,
like across the board. Like I
across
think
the
the
board.
only other time travel movie that scored perhaps higher on our list was Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
But we might not have
I
scored
think
that
this
as
scored
high.
higher.
I think this scored higher just because we did that one a little early and we were probably
Yeah.
giving ourselves some room. But yeah, that film
Yeah,
also.
we've gone pretty low since then.
Yeah, there was a couple real low moments on some time travel films there, but
They're mostly mine.
yeah. This one, yeah, this is probably the highest one we've scored so far, all the way
Yeah,
through. So
I'd
that's
say
pretty
so.
sweet.
Yeah. So I think what is next on our time travel list, though, Nick,
Ooh.
is I think next on the list is secret time travel movie, which I think we've both been really looking forward to this particular category.
And your pick was Arrival, and my pick was Interstellar.
Oh man, oh god, awesome space sci-fi movies. Oh man, this is gonna be great.
This is gonna be so good, yeah.
Two bangers back to back. Oh no, I have to watch Interstellar. I love Interstellar, but I haven't watched it since theaters because I've been afraid to.
Yeah, this is gonna be tough for you, man. I've seen both of these movies so many times since they came out, but you have not seen Interstellar for a second time. That's honestly gonna help me probably because, like, it's almost gonna be like watching it for the first time for you because it's been so long.
This is gonna hurt.
We've only got 4 movies left in our time travel draft.
That's crazy. Oh my
Yeah.
god. Yeah, this has been a whole year experience Nick and I have been
Yeah.
doing. I greatly recommend if you enjoyed this, going back and listening to the original draft in which we actually put
Yeah.
all of this together.
Absolutely.
And then going through our logic of A, like whether or not the movie performed well, but B, whether or not the mechanics for time travel like made sense within the context of the movie. It's been a super fun exercise to do with you, Nick. And we got some bangers for the last 4. I'm very excited.
Stoked, super stoked. So I think what we'll do is Arrival next, then Interstellar, and then we've got our pick the unpicked category, which was just us giving us ourselves like if we could go back in time and pick another one. And your choice was Safety Not Guaranteed, and mine was Tomorrowland with George Clooney. So
I think what's fun about those 2 movies is for each other's movies, I don't think we've seen them. Like you've not seen Safety Not Guaranteed, and I've not seen Tomorrowland.
correct. So it'll be really cool
Yeah.
to kind of go through
Yeah, that is neat.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited about that.
Follow us on Threads, where you can find us talking about whatever's currently streaming, and give us a like and subscribe if you don't mind there, and let us know in the comments what you think about X-Men: Days of Future Past.
And until then, may the review be with you.
Peace.